Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome back to Curated Clean, the podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Mike.
My name is Mandy.
And I'm Whitney.
Welcome to the show today. We have a lot to talk about and very little time.
Yes.
So let's just get right into it. Today we're talking about Mthfr, which is a gene mutation. And no, it is not
An abbreviation,
an
for
abbreviation
something.
for a curse word.
shouldn't
Although I think sometimes it can be attributed to that.
It can act a little
It can act a little bad.
nasty.
Depending on it. But if you don't know what MTHFR is, there are two sides to this. Good for you. You probably don't have any issues, and you probably don't have the gene mutation. If you're on the other side of that, if you've never heard of it, but you have a lot of undiagnosed things going on, you know something's wrong. This may be your answer, and keep listening today to see if you tick any of those boxes and if you need to talk to your practitioner about those things.
Right. Now, I just want to throw out, as we always say, we are not doctors, we are not scientists.
experts.
What we're going to share with you today is just research that we have personally done, and also our personal experience, and that's what our personal experiences is what sparked all of this for us. So,
Right.
and Michelle is going to share a little bit about the book that kind of helped guide us through our initial journeys.
I believe it was Whitney actually who had gone to a doctor and first brought up MTHFR. I know that we kind of went, it's what?
I had never heard of it, so I had to ask him because he said, have I ever done an HFR test? I think you've got all the symptoms. And my first question, I had a lot of issues going on at that time anyway, but my first question was, what is it? Like, I was like, is this some rare disease that I need to be
Should that have been bleeped out when you said that?
Yeah, exactly.
But seriously, so it was during that journey that Whitney started changing her diet. She got the test, found out she was positive. It is a genetic mutation, meaning that if she had some of it, most likely
It runs in families.
Whitney had 2 copies.
Yes.
Let me just throw out there. Mandy, I'll touch on this a little bit later. She's going to be our non-professional expert today.
Oh, goodness gracious. No pressure.
On some things. But, and so when she found out that she had 2 copies, most likely you were going to, the other
It runs
two
in
would at
families, so we
least-
should be tested as well.
Yes.
Right. Especially because we're all females and, carrying children.
Well,
and
but we found we dug in. We found out, there's this guy. His name is Dr. Ben Lynch. He's basically the world's leading expert on the MTHFR gene mutation, if not most genetic mutations, epigenetics.
Yes.
Michelle is going to tell you a little bit about his book that he's got out.
Yeah, we have his book here with us today. It's by Dr. Ben Lynch. Obviously, it's called Dirty Genes. I'm going to read you just a little excerpt from the back. He received his doctorate in naturopathic medicine from Bastyr University. He has supported thousands of clients and trained thousands of physicians and health professionals across the globe in using insights from epigenetics to optimize health. He is the founder of Seeking Health, which we use some of his supplements as well.
Yes.
I believe it's just seekinghealth.com or something like that. You can just, look that up. He's the founder of Seeking Health, a company that helps educate both the public and health professionals on how to overcome genetic dysfunction through diet, lifestyle, and supplements. He lives in Seattle, Washington with his wife and 3 sons. You can find him on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the World Wide Web. He's usually under Dr. Ben Lynch. That's a Y in Lynch, or Dr. Benjamin Lynch. He really is interactive with his patients and people on social networking. And there was a time I reached out to his group. He didn't respond back to me personally. He responded back to you guys personally.
Yeah, he's responded to us personally.
But I went on the website and actually emailed, and I did have somebody from his team contact me back within 24 hours. So he does put his money where his mouth is as far as contacting you back. And he really is, if you haven't read his book, Dirty Genes, you should go pick up a copy. If you think you maybe have some gene issues or just in general not feeling great but not getting...
And it touches on even more than MTHFR.
Right.
Yes.
But the good thing about this is if you've never heard of it, it gives you kind of like a laundry list to go through and like make a checklist off of symptoms you may have. So it really helped me because obviously I am not an expert in gene mutations. So being able to read through that and say, well, I have, of these 12 issues, I have about 10 of them. So maybe I should get tested. So
right.
I think it's definitely worth a read. And it's definitely written to where you can understand it. And he shares a lot of patient stories and testimonies. It's definitely worth a read.
Well, he has MTHFR himself. And so he talks about
well.
a lot of this is because... What he got into it is because he ended up being a person full of symptoms with no answers. And so I feel like that life experience is where you go, I knew something wasn't right. How many stories have you heard? I knew something wasn't right. I was seeing doctors who were saying, there's nothing here. And then you find another practitioner when you keep trying. And that's why you have to be dedicated to being your best health advocate.
Well,
so Mandy's going to go into a little bit about, first of all,
more
she's going to use a
science
lot of words,
references.
like she's going to use methylation a lot. And so I'm just going to start out with
yes.
saying methylation from dictionary.com says it is the process of replacing a hydrogen atom with a methyl group. Now, most of you don't know what that is, and we're not going to get into it because it's going to take a long time to do that chemistry setup. But the reality is methylation is a base chemical process for a lot of things in the body. Mandy's going to expand on that.
Sure.
And so it's important that if MTHFR is an impedance in that cycle, and that cycle happens in a lot of different areas within your cells. And so I often describe it as if you take $100 to the bank, and they can only process $50 of it. When you go back to try to pull $100 out of your account, there's only $50 there, and you're like, what happened? Well, it's because the bank could only convert $50 into the account. The same thing goes with your cells. It's often referred to, I think he refers to it as a bucket brigade.
Yeah, a bucket brigade. You start with a nice full bucket of methylation, but you're sloshing it around from bucket to bucket. You get to the end, you have like a cup of water instead of a whole bucket.
You're really thirsty because there's not enough there.
So your body is in a deficit already. And on top of that, all the excess that's been sloshed out to the sides is now clogging up your liver. Your body's trying to process it. So it can cause a lot of issues, something that I have a lot of people say to me is, why does it even matter if I have an MTHFR gene mutation? Because I'm telling my doctor this, and they're looking at me and telling me, well, that's not a big deal. You don't need to be worried about that. I remember one time, Whitney and I were literally sitting with a genetic counselor. This was several years ago. And she looked straight at me and she said, there's so many people out there who have the MTHFR gene mutation.
Yeah, I've even heard it something of like 40% of the population has it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive portion of the population has this MTHFR gene mutation, some form of it, and there can literally be hundreds of mutations of the MTHFR gene, but your doctor will probably only test for like two.
Right.
But
the two most common ones are C677T and 1298. Those are the most common ones.
Let's say that one more time just because it's pretty fast, but it's C677T and the A1298C. Those are the two that are
the two most common.
Common.
And when you hear that, you're going to hear homozygous or heterozygous. Homozygous means that you have two copies. Heterozygous means that you have one copy. Right. And then there are some people who are compound heterozygous, where you have one copy of each, but you do have both of them. So there are different.
And each one can create different symptoms, and
now
they need different supplementation.
Now, the Western medicine world says that there's not enough research on 1298 to even say that it even affects anything. But if you're a person who is compound heterozygous, or you have copies of 1298, some people in my own family, in my married family, only carry the 1298 copies, and they have very similar issues that I have, and they do better on MTHFR treatments. So to say that there isn't enough research, the research of experience says in the family members in my life, it's a big deal. It does impede detoxification processes. Right. And so now let's head over to Mandy, today's expert today on this subject, to discuss.
This is sort of hilarious because I was never the best in science class, but when something intrigues you, it's interesting how much you will dive in. When it affects your daily life, you will learn to like the subject. Okay,
or at least find the answer.
So people will say to me all the time, because I've talked to friends before, and I've said, I think you might have MTHFR. You really need to get tested. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I told my doctor, and she just said it's not really that big of a deal, And so
everybody has it. Everybody's doing it.
Yeah. So what's the big deal? And so we have to remember that the MTHFR gene initiates the methylation cycle, like Michelle was saying. And it's a process that provides methyl to over 200 functions in your body. So you're saying, okay, I don't understand what that means. We don't need to get into what that means right now or what the scientific process is. Right. All you need to know is that it affects these certain things. I'm just going to read this off to you. You can see whether you think this would be important to your body or not. It can affect. If it is disrupted, it affects your antioxidant production, your brain chemistry, cell repair, detoxification, energy production, genetic expression, immune response, inflammation, and many other crucial processes. So you have to remember that if you have, whether you're homozygous or heterozygous, this can retard your process of creating methyl by 30 to 70%,
which is a lot. Another thing I want to I feel like we're really doom and gloom with that list right now. And here's what I want to encourage everybody about, especially Dr. Lynch talks about this a lot. He is so hopeful in this. And we have to remember that our genes are not our destiny. It's like, oh,
Right.
you may have dirty genes, you know,
you
and he
can
doesn't even
clean
like
them
calling,
up.
he's even
Right.
changed that now. He's like, I don't even like calling them dirty genes. You just have to know that your genes could be impeded. And if you make certain changes to your lifestyle and your diet, your stress load, we're going to talk more about, May's going to talk about that more as I get done with my interruption. But the reality is, just because these things are present doesn't mean that a person is gonna get cancer. It doesn't mean that this is a death sentence for you. This is so that you know, so you can better equip yourself to take the life test. You know, if you don't know the subject, you can't pass the test.
Right,
So
right,
this
right.
is part of it. So there's a lot of things in there that can go really wrong.
Exactly. So just quickly, not to be doom and gloom, but just things to look out for.
Right.
The risk factors. This is a very tiny condensed list of things that are risk factors. If you would have one or both of these possible gene mutations, so that includes Alzheimer's, asthma, autism, mental health disorders, in particular bipolar disorder, breast cancer, Down syndrome, in yourself or other children that you might have, epilepsy, heart murmurs, leukemia, infertility, both male and female, MS, heart attack, Parkinson's, schizophrenia, thyroid issues, including cancer, miscarriages, postpartum depression, cleft palate, congenital heart defects, spina bifida, and tongue tie. That seems like a lot of terrible things. Okay, yes, it does. Okay?
I'm going to just wipe my brow there for a second.
Yeah.
But as a person who's experienced a few things on there, the nice thing to know is that if I know how to remedy those things, I often talk about putting energy towards things.
Right.
I can have some intention towards these different things. For one thing, for me, it's huge on diet and even stress reduction. I have a huge problem with stress. I even tend to go towards that bipolar disorder, depression. I have a
Our mother did.
Right. I have a tendency of going not fully clinically depressed or, you know, I wouldn't technically fall into that category, but I have the tendency to lean that way versus any other way.
Right. And I think a lot of people deal with that, you know, even seasonally. We've talked about that, you know, and that can be
For
part
another
of this.
day, we'll talk about the seasonal.
Exactly. But so then we can get a little bit deeper in. So why does this happen? What is affected exactly by this? And so it basically comes down to your B vitamin groups. Okay, so we've got our B9, which is folate, B12, methylcobalamin, and then B2, which is the riboflavin. And so why do we need these? Why
And
does
I'm
it
sure
matter?
you've seen these on the side of a cereal box or anything at the store. They're always going to you know make
These are
reference
kind
to
of
those.
These will be right
put
there.
on there.
You know, they'll be right there telling you your percentage daily.
Right.
You know,
Yep.
even if you don't know what they are, you've seen it before. Why are they important? Okay, so because these vitamins help with the methylation process, and they will create things such as choline. You've probably heard of choline before. Oh, it's in your vitamins or it's in your baby's, you know, special drink or whatever, you know. And so choline, it helps with cell wall repair. I don't think I need to go into like why that would be important, but your cells obviously need cell wall repair.
Yes.
Creatine, which is important for brain and muscle function. You see that, and they talk about that with sports drinks and proteins and things like that.
And if you're a bodybuilder, you know things that you want to.
You need that muscle function. Yeah. And then melatonin, which we all realize everyone knows it's for a proper sleep cycle.
And not only that, you know, once I started doing cancer treatment, alternative care style, one of the big things was I'm melatonin deficient, just genetically, which, MTHFR positive,
Right.
I'm melatonin deficient, so I take melatonin every day, and I take pretty high doses. We'll talk about that on another podcast because I'll probably flabbergast people with the amount of melatonin that I take. But for a person who always thought I slept well, and then realize that I am literally melatonin deficient, you got to take it. The only thing I'm going to interject there before we get on to the full podcast of that is make sure that if you are taking melatonin, please make sure it's pure quality, that it doesn't have fillers in it and those kind of things. I often
That goes for any supplement, please.
and I'm going to touch on that real quick, really fast. If you're going to purchase a supplement, please don't buy it from big box stores and chains, because there has been research done that shows that just because the labeling has a leaf on it and maybe references outside does not mean that it is quality. I think a lot of supplements get bad raps because of the low quality and low efficacy of some of these
It's important
junky
to
brands.
look through that ingredient list, and if you have a question,
Call the
call
company.
the company or do just
They want you to buy their
product and
product.
just see what
Yes.
it really is about, because
Yes.
it's very important.
Try if you have to choose between a big name store that you can buy everything but the kitchen sink there, or a health food store, try the health food store. They're going to filter their product a little bit better, I think, than other places. And then even online, just because somebody sells something cheaper doesn't mean you're getting the actual product and all that kind of stuff. So that's my interjection there. Just make sure that you're looking for quality supplements, because some of the supplements that we're talking about here, if you are going to supplement, it's got to be good quality. It can't be something that's going to have binders and fillers that's going to impede this even more.
Right, exactly, because that's one of the big problems is,
You already know
I mean, if
processing
you
as
already,
well. So then when you try to add a supplement, if there's a bunch of filler, I mean, that's why it's important. You already have a kink in the wheels.
Right.
So
Right.
putting another one in there is just going to throw it off.
yeah,
Right.
I mean, the bucket brigade, all that
Yeah.
sloshed off extra quote quote water is clogging up your liver and causing all these extra issues. So
Two steps forward, one step
Right.
back. You're never going to gain.
And you're trying to help yourself. You think you're doing
Yes.
something to help yourself, and you're actually causing a hindrance. And you wonder, well, I'm doing
It's
what they
not
said, but it's not
working.
working.
Right.
That could be why. So
Yep.
yes, please, vet your supplements, everything about them. Don't be afraid to call. A lot of these companies will actually speak to you. And if they don't know the answer right away, we've had many of them say, actually, I don't have the answer for you right now, but they will call you back. And if they don't, then, maybe it's not the right supplement for you.
Switch to a different brand that will talk to you.
So that we need the methylation to do those important things, and we need it also to help us get rid of certain things like arsenic, which people don't realize is something that is just naturally occurring.
Right.
We ingest it; it's in our bodies. We need it this process to make it inactive and to detoxify it from
Rid it
our
from our
bodies.
body.
Yes.
Histamine. When this is a powerful immune compound, we obviously need this, but too much or too little, as we know, can cause autoimmune response,
Right.
can attack your own body. If you don't have enough of it, though, you're not mounting enough of an immune response and you're being attacked.
Right.
And then finally, to help with estrogen regulation, okay? And as women, we can speak to this uniquely.
Yep.
Sorry, guys, but it can cause PMS, menstrual issues. Well, there's always...
But men
there's always,
can be
That's true.
over estrogenated as well. Just
no,
like
that's very
women
no,
can
that
have
is
too
true.
much testosterone.
That's very
so
true. Sorry, guys, I didn't mean to leave you out. So it can cause PMS.
women are more likely to have an issue. But
Right.
go ahead, PMS.
PMS, menstrual issues, and a risk of estrogen-related cancers as
Right.
well.
And that's because estrogen isn't just, I think one time we think of it's just a box and there's estrogen inside.
Right.
This will be
a lot
another
of
podcast we'll go into. There are, I believe it's 5 different types of estrogen, if I'm just going off the top of my head. And I won't get into all the names of them, but there are good estrogens, bad estrogens, there's alpha estrogens, there are things that you can eat that mimic these things.
Right.
And because if we think about it, every cell has almost keyholes on the outside of it, and each one of these chemical compounds and hormones all plug into these certain keyholes, and they open the doors to get in and out of the cell. And so methylation is one of those things, and MTHFR means that sometimes those keys don't. They open doors that they should be closing, or close doors that should be opening. And if we think about it like that, that's how this impedance or letting too much or it's an issue, because your cells aren't communicating in the proper way. They're not finishing out their chemical processes to completion, and then things get left half done. If I was working at a store and my coworker only did half the work, and then I didn't have the ability to finish their work, I'd be really mad that they left their stuff undone. But then I'm a different chemical, so I'm not allowed to impede or help with that production.
But it would just keep building up.
It just keep building up, and I'm going, hey,
It never solves the problem.
I'm sending headaches. I'm doing all sorts of things to the brain. I'm saying I'm in pain. I have digestive issues. I'm trying to tell the body, hey, there's a problem here, right here. And, if you go to the doctor and they're not listening to you or investigating, this stuff just piles up until it goes over, and then you have a really big problem on your hands.
Right. And so, the things that can poke at this, I would say poke the bear. The thing that can poke the bear, that go along with this is high stress. We live in a very stressful world anyway.
Ding, ding.
So we need to you've got to learn to take care of this lack of good sleep, which that's a cyclical issue anyway, because if you don't make enough melatonin, you're not going to get good sleep. Then you're not going to get good sleep because you're not making good melatonin. It just keeps going around
And
in circles.
we don't discuss a lot the power of sleep. Sleep is
Good
extremely
restorative sleep.
Yes, there's a lot of circadian rhythms. There's a lot of organ systems, meridians, stuff that all reset during our sleep cycles. That's
Healing
another
can be
thing,
done during that
That's
time.
another thing that I suggest. If you find that you're waking up at certain points in the middle of the night, mark down those times because a lot of times if you find that you always wake up at 2 a.m., there's usually an organ system that is resetting there that you can actually investigate with your practitioner and say, I wake up every day at 3:15 in the morning. Why? What do? I get up and go to the bathroom, or I get up and get a drink of water, or I wake up and go back to sleep or can't go back to sleep. Important things to make note of, put on your list for when you talk to your doctor.
A vegan or vegetarian diet. Now, we've discussed this in past podcasts, our little beginner series that, my husband and I go back and forth with eating vegan and vegetarian. There's nothing, we're not telling you to give up that diet or lifestyle.
I think diets are too complex to say this is what you should do. That everybody is different.
So we do it for more spiritual reasons. So, I mean, everyone has their ethical, moral, whatever reasons that they want to do this, health reasons that they're doing it. Right. I'm not telling you to give up any particular diet. I'm just saying if you are eating a vegan or vegetarian diet, you will absolutely have to supplement if you have an MTHFR gene mutation, because you just will not be able to get some of the nutrients that you need. They absolutely only come from different forms of meat. Maybe if you're a pescatarian, I need to do a little more research. You might be able to get away with it. But
that might be a subject. We have a couple friends who are nutritionists. That might be something they can come in and help tackle with us live on the show.
Yeah, that'd be a great thing to bring up with them. And then lastly, and I'm bringing this up lastly because we're already even running out of time, but we need to touch on the topic of folic acid. Now, I know when we all got tested, what we were all told was you just need to take large doses of folic acid.
I had one doctor write me a prescription for 1,000 milligrams of folic acid a day.
It's a lot of folic acid.
That is a ton.
And you'll see this too. I mean, you'll see, well, what's so wrong with folic acid? It's in everything. Like just like that riboflavin and things like that you see on the side of the cereal box, you'll see folic acid. Oh, it's a good thing, right? I mean, it's in our breads. It's in our cereals.
They're fortifying these things for our health.
Yeah, to make us healthier. Right.
At least that's what they're selling it as.
If you're being told, well, you've got MTHFR, you're having a problem creating or processing folate, here, have some folic acid. It's just the same. And there's a lot of... I'll just put it this way. There's a lot of expert sources out there that will say that people with MTHFR gene mutations can process all types of folate, including folic acid. Here's the problem quickly. This is very quick because we could have a whole podcast on folic acid alone. Right. It is a synthetic form of folate. Folate is bioavailable in things like your food. And so it's very bioavailable. You ingest it and your body can immediately use it, okay? It doesn't have to do much. It might have a couple little processes, but otherwise it's usable. Folic acid has to go through so many steps that, again, it's sort of like that bucket brigade. By the time it actually gets down, you might have only a cup left to use. And on top of that, it might have depleted all your energies to get to that point. And it also has a lot of excess toxins created with it that have to be released from your body. So again, now you're clogged up your liver, used up all your energy, and you have nothing left but a cup when you need a whole bucket. Right. So here's the deal with folic acid. We'll just say quickly. If you have an MTHFR gene mutation, you need to flee from folic acid. You need to run away from it. Now you're going to say, this is what you're going to tell us, but guys, it's in everything. Yes, it is. Yeah. It is in everything. But here's the deal too. People are wisening up to it. You know, it's sort of like when
you pick up the box or whatever, and it says folic acid, you just set the box back down, and you may shed a tear because that's another thing I'll discuss. The first time when you switch a diet plan or a meal planning, however you want to describe that. The first time you go to the grocery store, be prepared to grieve and mourn that process because it will be different. Yes. And that's just the way it's going to go. But just realize it is a task that is possible. But the biggest thing we can tell you is if you are looking at a supplement, a multivitamin, food source, if it says folic acid, set it down and walk away.
Right. It's not going to be good for you guys. It's not going to be good for you. And I think, a lot of people will say... going back to the whole, why does it matter? I just think that just for a second, just to share with you a few stories, and this is what this podcast is really about. Yeah. We've lived these experiences, and just to share with you how we came to this, our experiences with MTHFR, because we all, oddly enough, got diagnosed around the same time, but for totally different reasons and with completely different practitioners. So it was a very, very interesting situation. Michelle, I think you should start out because you were actually the one. I think you got tested first, or was it you who got tested first?
Whitney got tested first.
Whitney got tested first. Okay, so you were dealing with Lyme treatment
at the time, and I was also dealing with some seizure episodes and things like that. And my Lyme doctor, actually said I'd end up in the hospital after I had he'd started me on a B vitamin supplement actually, and because my B vitamins were so low, and I was on a very high dose, so. I went ahead and took them thinking this is going to help my energy and this will help deplete the anxiety and depression that I'm having. And which and it did for a little bit, but then I had been on it just long enough that it wasn't what I needed. So my doctor said, you know, we've been
Backed up
looking
in the
at your-
system.
Right.
Yes. And my homocysteine levels had always been through the roof. Like I think normal level is like 15 and mine were always up in the 30s.
And just to interject here, that
Yes.
that goes back to that whole the histamine that we were talking about earlier. That is a measure of that. So Whitney's basically was having like a terrible inflammatory response in her body.
My body wasn't processing anything. My food
Because
allergy
homocysteine
list-
is actually a level of inflammation. That's that reading. It's how high the inflammation, quote unquote, is in your body when they take that.
Right.
And it was, I mean, at that point, like my food allergy list was through the roof. I was only able to eat a few things. And
yeah, I remember that.
also just allergic reactions to things. I'd walk outside, come back, and I'd have a rash on my arm.
Hives
and
everywhere.
Hives
Right.
and not know what was happening. So finally, about a year down the road, my doctor had said, I think we need to call for that. So I did a blood test for it, and that came back, of course, positive. I had the 2 copies. So after that, then we all kind of started, and I had issues in the past, like with my cycle, that obviously we didn't know were related at the time because I had no idea what all the symptoms were.
Right.
And I think we've all struggled with that in different ways. But so after I got my test back, then my doctor suggested, I know your doctors also had some input on that, had said, you know, you have 2 copies. Your family should probably get tested because obviously if you're carrying 2, there's a pretty good chance that everyone else might have a copy as well. So
And then you actually made that phone call to me and said, okay, I've tested positive. We should probably get tested. Well, at the time, I was, you know, I had just found out we were pregnant with our very first child.
Yeah.
I ended up miscarrying that baby. We were pretty devastated with that. And that'll be another podcast. We can discuss some of the precursors to that miscarriage. But I was taking folic acid because I had done some research and knew that it probably wasn't like the safest thing, that I had actually found out that folate was more bioavailable and that kind of stuff, but I didn't have the guts to go against the standard that my, you know, doctors and OBs were telling me. So for me, I didn't fall into the standard category of some of this stuff. I was hypothyroid, but I didn't, you know, a lot of times I wasn't actually diagnosed with that because even though I was low on blood work and my symptoms matched, some of them didn't. Like I wasn't overweight. A lot of times, like, well, if you're hypothyroid, you have to be overweight. My husband and I are both hypothyroid, and neither one of us are overweight. And actually, if anything, my husband is a little underweight. I mean, like he's a thin guy. So when people said, "Oh, you're hypothyroid," I remember the first time they told him that, I thought, we both laughed. Went, "You're not
no
overweight.
way."
There's no way."
Right.
But that's that cookie cutter, you know, mentality of it doesn't present every way that way. And they didn't check us for MTHFR at that time. They were just checking for hypothyroid. Another thing that I found out is, although I had 1 miscarriage and 2 children that I did carry to term, I did have bleed through scares and things like that. I also knew after I had found out that I needed to be taking high levels of omega-3s because a lot of times they tell women, and any pregnant women out there listening to this, you have got to talk to a doctor about this. You cannot listen to us on this, but there's some people who say to take blood thinners and that kind of stuff because MTHFR women are more likely to have blood clotting because of the high protein content and stuff in their blood. You need to talk to your doctor about that. You know, you need to talk to your doctor. Don't change anything until you talk to your doctor. But these are why it's important, because you need to go and talk to them and see about what works best for your genetics, your health, your experiences and symptoms before and after pregnancy, periods, all that kind of stuff. And things like that. I tended to have a lot of toxicity migraines, but nobody discussed them with me like that. I started having migraines and really intense
young.
PMS symptoms in middle school. And so for me, as soon as I hit puberty, it was like these migraines would come on and I just lay in my bed for, 3 days over the weekend. So there were a lot of things that, but it didn't take my husband and I long to get pregnant. We didn't have infertility. It was almost like we had issues staying pregnant, but nobody discussed that with us, that wasn't normal. Not that I had lots of miscarriages, but it was very like, don't tax yourself and rest and all that stuff. Things that I should be able to do more of during pregnancy.
Exactly. And
Mandy, you had full-blown infertility.
Yeah, we had full-blown infertility. We struggled for 8-9 years to even get pregnant. We adopted in between. And then right around the same time that you guys were getting tested, I went the traditional route. I just literally went to a medical, regular MD, told him the story and got tested. and found out that I only had one copy. And some people, there's a lot of practitioners who even say one copy doesn't matter at all.
It doesn't count.
Right.
But I will tell you this.
But your experience was you had one copy.
Yeah.
You could not get pregnant.
Exactly.
I have 2 copies and I could get pregnant.
So here was the deal. After I find out I've got my one copy, I literally changed. All I did, guys, I changed nothing. And this was after years. I was diagnosed with estrogen dominant PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, which I talked about before.
Which will be another podcast another day. We'll talk about that.
Exactly. And so they had literally given us I think it was a 5% chance of ever getting pregnant naturally. No, that was even with intervention such as IVF. And that was when we had just kind of decided we were going to adopt. I went down that path. But 1 month into being on methylated B vitamin supplementation, just taking a pill, just a supplement. And I was pregnant with our first biological child. I had absolutely no issues at all with that pregnancy. Carried her to term. I since then have had 1 miscarriage at 11 weeks, and then I carried another baby to full term again. So this was, and we had no medical intervention for those 3 babies. None. That just happened. And I should say also that we are older. I'm going to be 40 this year, and my husband is 7 years older than me. So it wasn't that we were spring chickens and it just worked out.
Well, and the same thing with me. My first pregnancy was when I was 30. So, we weren't young. I should have been classified into, when you hit 30, literally they almost throw you into the high risk category no matter what.
All my children were geriatric pregnancies.
Yeah.
Quote, quote, geriatric.
Exactly.
So, other
Gotta
things.
love that term.
So, infertility and getting pregnant was the big thing in my life. And then, I lived my whole life with this sort of crash and burn kind of lifestyle, which I just thought was how
roller coaster lifestyle.
Yeah, and
our mom had that a lot too.
Yeah, you have these moments of just extreme. You're very prolific. You have tons of energy, great focus. These are some of the great things actually that can happen with MTHFR. Yeah, there are actual positives.
Yes.
So you can be super hyper focused to get a lot of work done.
Dr. Lynch talks about that too. Part of the reason the reason I got so good at epigenetics and that kind of stuff is because part of the thing of MTHFR is you can get obsessive about things and you want to keep learning, but you can be obsessed and you can be obsessed. And so,
So, I lived my whole life like this. I remember in college, I would work toward projects or things. I'd be like a president of something, or I'd be working on something, and I would literally work and get so much stuff done. And then I would crash. And I would crash for a week, sometimes 2 weeks, and I would be barely able to pull myself out of bed. I started noticing the older that I got that I had sort of this hair trigger anger. It was like, and it would subside, but it would kind of hit me like, I'm not an angry person. Why am I so angry about this? This is something our mother had struggled with as well. She would just seem to instantaneously go 0 to 60. She'd be, perfectly happy and then not,
And some people, even if they wanted to do that, couldn't accomplish those kinds of things. And,
exactly.
And so it's a blessing and it can be an impedance in your life. And the important thing is that if you think you have it, you need to check it out.
Right.
And look into it.
And we're running out of time, so we're going to wrap this up for you guys. But, I just want to say again, even like Dr. Lynch says, and he says this over and over again, no matter what your gene mutation is, your genes are not your destiny.
No.
Okay?
Right.
You don't have to live with that laundry list we said earlier. Oh, well, I'm just headed toward Parkinson's, or I'm just headed toward Alzheimer's. No, you're not.
Right, no.
You can take control. You have everything that you need to be able to take control of your situation and your life.
And that's what we have said from
health.
the very beginning we wanted you to do. Be empowered about your health.
To be your best advocate.
Empowered about your life. And if you don't know, then you don't know what you don't know. So now you know a little bit more and can start asking questions. And once again, we're going to say this over and over again. Do your own research on this. Make your own list of pros and cons. Get Dr. Lynch's book, Dirty Genes. Take a peek in there. See what you fit. Or get on his social media stuff. He even gives tests and stuff on there. Yeah, on his website and everything.
Yeah, so just to wrap up some stuff, what can you do right now? Like, even if you can't go get the testing or whatever, what can you do right now? You can eat a good diet.
Right.
Try
Seems
to
simple,
get more
but
leafy greens.
Yeah,
and
leafy
a lot
greens,
of good
yeah.
veggies.
Cruciferous vegetables.
eat organic when you can. Trust me, guys, it's worth it. Those extra toxins, if you're MTHFR, your body just doesn't need them, okay?
Yep.
Cutting out chemicals, that's part of it too. Your body is already being inundated all day, every day by so many different toxins. Extra chemicals, even in like your household cleaning products or the stuff you put on your skin or your hair, it's just not worth it.
Right.
It's just not worth it in the end of the day because your body is going to be slowed down so much. If you, let's say you have, your processes are being impeded 70%. Then on top of that, you're adding more toxic stress.
Right.
It's just your body doesn't need that stress load. You wouldn't want to weigh yourself down even more if you're trying to climb up a hill. You wouldn't put on a heavy backpack. Don't do that to your cells. Don't do that to your processes. And then stress. This is easier said than done, but we need to reduce your stress. You need to get good restorative sleep.
And as Americans, I think that is a problem that we have just in Western culture that we are
And we glorify
go-getters. Yeah, we're go-getters.
They
And we
never
even
stop. They go, 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 go.
And you're right. We do glorify it. It's like, well, I did this. I pulled an all-nighter. I did this, and that, and I only got this much sleep.
The cult of being busy,
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it makes
I
you
don't
feel
think social
important.
media helps with those things either, as far as making everybody feel busy. But there is something to be said about stopping and smelling the roses, quote unquote. It is important. Take time out of your day, even if that's 5 minutes, to play with your kids or take a walk, pet your dog. The big thing with that, I think, would be with stress is your intention. Set your intention aside for something. If you believe in God, set a time tired to meditate on the Word of God or pray, do things like that, or just sit and just be quiet for a little
Just
bit.
be mindful for a moment.
Yeah.
And just take a mental check of your body too. A lot of times I don't even take the time to do that. Just sitting there and being mindful. How do I feel? What's going on?
just check
Not in a
in.
hyper stressed way, but in a peaceful way.
Yep, and even that hair trigger.
Ground yourself.
And even that hair trigger, anger and stuff. Sometimes, like when I find I've learned to control that a little bit more, but I feel agitated. Wait a second, I'm going to take a pause break, and I'm going to take a couple steps back, and I'm going to think about, why do I feel so overwhelmed today? Why am I getting angry about that? You can usually find a way that it began at a stress level somewhere that you didn't put in check then, and then it snowballed throughout the rest of your day, or within that hour or whatever. So
Right. And so those are some easy things. I mean, anyone can do that right now. You don't have to go to a doctor for that. You can literally just go to your grocery store to do that,
Right.
You can change this right now.
And once again, not everybody has the ability to get to a health food store. We grew up in rural Iowa.
There wasn't much at the time.
Our town now has more, but that town, but in the beginning it didn't. I mean, to find organic things was hard. So just remember my bartering system that I like to always talk about. Do as best you can, as often as you can. A little bit of something is better than all of nothing, and making a little bit of change is better than no change at all.
Right, exactly.
Even if it's just the dirty dozen. If you don't know what that is, check it out. We'll probably talk about it another day. But, in your fruit, pick out something that is less sprayed with pesticide than something else. Swap one thing out. Buy organic apples instead of, regular.
Right. And so you might be asking, well, how do I want to know now? I even just what you've talked about. Or maybe you go and you get dirty jeans and you say, oh my gosh, I tick off almost every single one of these boxes.
Right.
Now the book itself also has some suggestions about where to get tested.
Yep.
But just some things that we thought we'd throw out. You can go to your doctor. Okay. You can go to your doctor and say, I think I've got this. I would like to be tested. Some of them take it more seriously than others. That's something to consider. On top of that, you need to think about insurance and how much this is going to cost you. I remember my initial test, because insurance did not cover it. It was about $850. Some people don't have $1,000 to lay around.
And actually,
to
because
do
of
that.
the timing of that, mine was actually in the thousands. I think mine was around $2,000 for mine. And that was just intense. But I was pregnant. I was desperately scared to lose that baby. We ended up losing that baby anyway, which we were devastated. But, that was because it was considered exploratory. And,
Right. You
it's
gotta be
more
very
common
careful.
now. That was years ago. That was like 6 years ago. So there's a lot that has changed now. It is more of a hotkey.
But it's still stuff to be mindful of.
Oh,
I
always
wouldn't
be-
want any of
always
our
be mindful.
I wouldn't want any of you guys to be stuck with a bill that you can't pay.
Exactly.
So because there's other ways.
Just know that. So Manny's going to talk
And
about
something
some
a
other
little
ways.
bit more, maybe affordable is 23andMe. Ancestry.com might do this as well. I don't know. I'm just telling you the things I know for sure.
But you can search genetic packages there.
Yes.
And I think even Dr. Lynch just came out with one as well.
Strategene.
Strategene.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
called Strategene. STRATEGENE.
And I think that might even test.
Yes.
This might even test for some
Strategene.
of the other genes as well.
I know
It
he
does,
tests for some
yes.
concepts.
Contained in
So,
the book,
and his
so.
is actually quite affordable when
Yes,
it comes to things.
It is.
But there are lots of different brands. The other thing you might discuss with this is more likely with an alternative care practitioner, but ask them if they use a gene profiler that
Right.
some doctors can read these gene profiles easier because they're used to seeing
Right.
them. So ask what they would prefer you to use and see what works with your budget. You can even get Black Friday sales on these things. There's all sorts of, they'll do spring sales.
You know,
can get these affordably
And
if
I just
you
thought
really want them.
some even chiropractors and things like that,
Yep.
or if you have access, if you're very blessed to have access to traditional Chinese medicine practitioners, or just any other sort of practitioner like that, you can go out and ask them. They will probably even have their own testing kit that they have ready for you.
Right.
But we have completely run out of time, and like we said, we have just scratched the surface. We promise,
Oh, and real
promise.
quick, I want to interject this quickly.
Yes.
A lot of these gene tests are not blood work. They're
No,
saliva.
saliva.
They're something like
Or
that.
even
So
just a finger prick.
if you are deathly afraid of getting your blood drawn, there are other options for
Yeah.
genetic
Right, don't
testing.
be worried about that,
So don't be
yes.
worried about that.
Don't let that
we're
deter you.
We're sorry that this one went a little bit longer than usual. And with this, like we've said, we are not
is
experts. This is our own research. This is our own experiences.
Personal experiences, yes.
And also this is just scratching the
Yes,
surface.
this
We
is
didn't even
very
get into the
little.
actual scientific stuff
and
of this, but
we promise we're going to dive deeper into this. Hopefully, we'll be able to actually bring in
Have an
some greater
expert on,
experts
yeah.
in
Right.
next time. So be looking for that as well. So
Yep.
yes,
So just know we'll circle back around to this at some point, and go in a little bit deeper to educate on the more scientific side and chemical processes of that. But
Yes.
like we always say at the end of everything, at the end of every podcast, thank you so much for tuning in and listening with us, and spending your time with us. We know it's precious, so we're so grateful that you tune in. We hope that you've learned something today.
Yes.
Remember today we discussed Mthfr. That is a gene mutation. You can talk to your doctors about that. Once again, I will put that in bold print.
Yes.
Always talk to your doctors about
Don't
anything
make
that we
any
discussed
changes
today.
until you've
Don't make
talked to
any
your
any
doctor.
changes till you discuss it with a practitioner, nutritionist, somebody. Make sure somebody that is professional knows what you're doing, because we all did that. We all
Exactly,
did
we
that. We didn't. Well, may need to start taking a B vitamin, but that's pretty benign. But still, you did inform your doctor when you went to your
Right.
next checkup. So we always keep our doctors
we
informed.
had practitioners on our side. Yeah, they were
always,
helping us. Yes.
always. So we never go into it, without our professionals.
Without an
knowing.
expert, yes.
Exactly. So once again, thank you for tuning in. We greatly appreciate your time,
Yes, we want you to be healthy.
Be well.
and God bless you.